the Europe Summer Playoffs! Let's go!
And on the last hours of the Americas Summer Playoffs here for the Hearthstone Championship Tour, it all comes down to how it began for the top 8. Welcome, everybody, to the last match that we have with Dog versus Muzzy. This feels like deja vu, Kibler.
It does. You know, these players clashed this morning in their initial round match. Where Dog was victorious. So Muzzy is going to need to turn the tables on him to get his shot back at a championship this year.
That's right, and we have 2 players from Latin America, and we have a player from America who from USA, between Dog and Muzzy, will be able to join, and both have their respective fan bases. Dog has a lot of the content creation casual fan base that loves to watch his meme decks, love him just have fun on the stream. Muzzy's just been killing it, so a lot of the hardcore competitive scene has his back as well. But when you kind of look at the head-to-head, I got to give the edge to Dog, assuming that these guys just end up banning the same thing, partially because we're not sure how well Muzzy's Token Druid can perform against an anti-aggro lineup like Dog.
Yeah, Dog is playing a lineup that includes a lot of control decks, a lot of decks that are very good at dealing with the early game minion pressure that is a lot of Muzzy's lineup. You know, we've seen a lot of the Spiteful Druid so far in this tournament. In fact, it was the most popular deck. That deck has a lot of explosive potential. Muzzy's deck has a different kind of explosive potential, but his relies on the ability to get a lot of small minions on the board, and Dog's lineup is very good against that.
Yeah. It also kind of depends on what side you're leaning towards if you believe that the Odd Warrior is actually indeed favored against even Paladin. I mean, we kind of look at what happened in the previous series with Fibonacci. His Warrior lost 3 times, and it was most importantly the first match that he lost against Paladin that hurt the most.
I recall like the pre-show we were talking about those decks, and I was saying I tried this deck on on my stream over the past week, and I kept losing to Paladin.
Right.
You know, it feels like that deck has a lot of tools to AOE the board, but the problem compared to a deck like Odd Warrior is that you eventually turn the corner and have to beat them by playing these expensive cards. It's not how Odd Warrior works. Odd Warrior just tank up, tank up, tank up, tank up, and eventually they can't kill you because you're at just some astronomical health total.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if you feel like you're good against those even Paladins, it's not worth the ban. It said you want to take out the Q block, which is proven to be very strong. And of course, Muzzy does not want to play against Warlock. That's kind of what he teched his entire lineup. Doesn't have Spellbreakers, doesn't have anything really to get past those Void Lords. Instead, really wants to favor pressure and tempo. That's something that Muzzy loves in general, being able to play aggressive. So it's funny that we have a clash of styles, fast versus slow.
And I think Muzzy may have had a strong read that Quest Rogue was going to be a popular and successful deck this weekend. We mentioned on the previous match that all 3 of the players who qualified so far have pretty much the same lineup. They all have Quest Rogue lineups, and Muzzy was hoping to run into them. Instead, he's seer-facing against Dog, who has a lineup that's very strong against his.
So the percentages may favor Dog, but we'll let the cards do all the talking. Dog starts off with Priest against even Paladin, one of his better matchups in the spread here, as a Control Priest has a really good time against a lot of the waves of threats that even Paladin has. However, we'll see if the small techs end up favoring one player over the other. Muzzy is playing that Divine Shield pressure list with Valinir at the top end. Seems to be that is the deck list that is performing the best, as every other player that's qualified so far is running this list.
Turn 1 Northstar Cleric for Dog here is very important. Shuts down the hero power from Muzzy on turn 1 unless he wants to give Dog a free card, or a 2-mana card. The Pyromancer is also excellent. So Dog has some of his important early game tools. Other things he's looking for include Duskbreaker, as well as Powered Shield in order to really maximize the power of that Pyromancer.
Yeah, Dog is playing that slightly outdated list that you see with the Scale Worm. A lot of people play one-ofs. Instead, they replace that with the Holy Fire. But Holy Fire is a lot more important for matchups where burning the face can be the difference maker if it's a slower matchup, for example. Against the Paladin, I actually would want to have Scale Worm a lot of the times because it's cheaper and does the same damage on the board.
Speaking of Powered Shield, Dog picks one up, but the Knife Juggler from Muzzy here does mean that there is the threat of the cleric being killed by a juggle next turn. Dog will take his free card. That if a juggle hits that cleric, it ends up being quite poor for Dog here, because he can actually just get rid of it. But the Scale Hide is actually a very interesting draw, because it means that Muzzy has the ability to take it down right away no matter what. That was a very good draw for Muzzy, because that juggle did go face, and that cleric would have potentially proven to be a very big problem for him, feeding Dog additional resources.
Yep, an important resource to be definitely, because Muzzy acknowledging that Priest drawing cards is basically how you lose, straight up. They have so many good removal tools, and more importantly, if they're given enough cards, not only will they be able to remove everything, but they can just pressure you right back. They'll play Shadow Reaper Anduin and then keep removing your board while hitting your life total, and eventually just get you within Mind Blast range.
Yeah, this equality is a pretty interesting draw for Muzzy here, because that Pyromancer is a huge threat. Especially backed by Shadow Vision's Divine Hymn, more powered shields. I wouldn't be surprised to see Muzzy just pull the trigger on equality and trade right here.
Yes.
With this Wild Pyromancer. He can still use his 1-cost hero power, which still sets up Blessing of Kings for next turn.
That's just so insane. The even Paladin hero power is so good. I can't tell you.
Just gonna say, Dog really needs to draw a dragon here to enable that scale work. Because if he draws a dragon and can take down this minion, then there's no threat of the Blessing of Kings coming down. He does not find it, so now he's a 4/4 into the Blessing of Kings, which will make that recruit a 5/5 and get to value trade on this scale worm.
Yeah, well said, and everything's mapped out exactly how that pans out. The +1 attack would have made a huge difference. The rush would have made an even bigger difference. And now Muzzy has tempo. Dog has to react to this, has Mass Dispel to immediately disarm it. But it just, I wanted to emphasize how important that quality usage was. Even though it's great to take down Primordial Drake and Twilight Drakes, etc., I can't tell you how many times I've played as a Control Priest. My opponent hero powered on 1 and quality my Northshire Cleric on 2 and traded, and I lost because of that, because I couldn't actually play anything substantial for the next 2 turns.
Well, Muzzy has hero power into Stegodon. This is a card that's been cut from a lot of these lists, but has done a lot of good work for Muzzy so far. +3 attack will allow him to clear off this Cleric without any card draw.
That is big. Again, Dog's just gonna be hurting a little bit for this card draw. And no dragon for the Dustbreaker now, given that it wouldn't have changed if he kept Scale Worm, because that's not a dragon itself. But this is how important that Northshire Cleric drawing a card every turn.
Yeah, this is a deck that is very much reliant on particular synergies. You are trying to assemble your dragon synergy cards. You're trying to assemble your package of Mind Blast plus Alexstrasza and Anduin. And if you aren't able to find that additional card draw, you can tend to suffer. Dog has 1 copy of Acolyte of Pain in his deck that he can potentially find for some additional card draw, but that requires a little bit of enabling, generally with Pyromancer as well, to get the most of it.
Yeah, and you already use one of those Pyromancers. And while things like Psychic Scream are fantastic, a lot of people are really careful about how wide they go against the board now that you're entering turn 7. Some Paladins might just press the issue with just a simple 2 or 3 minion board, very similar to how people deal with Mind Control Tech and other really annoying board answering board swings.
And one of the things that's so powerful about this particular version of Paladin that Muzzy's playing, the Argent Commanders, the Avenging Wraths, you have tons of ability to push burst damage, and often you can set your opponent up such that if they Psychic Scream and the board is clear, something like True Silver Avenging Wrath can just finish them off. That's so much burst damage late in the game.
Yeah, that is kind of a lot of what players set up for. They want you to scream, so that way you just answer immediately and take up their entire mana.
And Dog has to pull the trigger on this Psychic Scream.
It's not even necessarily like the worst outcome here for Muzzy. Obviously, he would love to keep his minions on the board, but he didn't really lose much because he only has 1 Silverhand recruit in his deck.
Call to Arms, pretty nice draw though. Gets himself a Juggler. And one of those recruits got screamed
Right, but what's funny is that he has a life second on to benefit off of that in a way. So it's not even the worst possible outcome.
And now if Muzzy were to, say, play Loot Hoarder, if Dog plays, or even play nothing, this is essentially a 1-card board.
Yeah.
And now Dog is forced to react to this with some sort of AoE, or there's the threat of Sunkeeper Terram or that Stegodon pushing tons of extra damage.
Yeah, I think Muzzy has to keep Primordial Drake in mind. That is the 8th threat that you're concerned now that you've seen Psychic Scream on 7. But, this is kind of very similar. Recognizing that if he overextends into this Dustbreaker or any similar AoE, that he could have been pushing it.
The Alexstrasza there, a pretty crucial draw for Dog, allows him to enable that Duskbreaker, clear off the board. But again, he needs to keep answering essentially all the threat that Muzzy generates each turn. It's gonna go with Loot Hoarder, Loot Hoarder. This is actually one of the cards that is quietly, I think, one of the most important elements of what makes this deck so powerful. Because when you hit Loot Hoarder off of Call to Arms, or when you just play Loot Hoarder as a threat, your opponent reacts to it, you're not giving up any resources. We see games where even Paladin has just a handful of cards at the end of the game or in the mid-game against a control deck.
Yes, yeah, they're actually even on card parity, except for the board state, so
Well, they
I
are
guess
even,
Dog
even
is...
Paladin.
Ha! What you did there, I saw it. You know, Muzzy is pretty behind on board, but that's where Sunkeeper Terran equalizes. His hero power equals an 8-mana card now in terms of power level. So, you know, Dog has to answer this board now.
And he doesn't have a great tool for it. He has Psychic Scream, but that's, you know, his last remaining AoE here. His 2 dragons just bump into Tarim and don't do enough, leaving you know, other minions. I think we might see him just pull the trigger on the Psychic Scream here, simply because if he does not, he's, you know, facing the threat of, you know, a lot of damage to his face and doesn't really have a great play otherwise. He could try and just fire Alexstrasza off his opponent's face. Now that Tarim has been used, there's only equalities that end up potentially really neutralizing the Alexstrasza efficiently. But yeah, this is just kind of a rough spot for Dog because he doesn't have any backup if he does choose to clear this board.
Yeah, I like the Alexstrasza.
Yeah.
I do think Alexstrasza, before your opponent plays Tarim, does have its risks, but because your opponent can gain a lot of tempo back and taunt wall you. And now Muzzy has opportunities to try to press in. I mean, Dog also Alex post. Or sorry, usually you want to Alex and then try and push in for the kill, but a lot of times if you play Alexstrasza before, like Shadow Reaper Anduin, for example, you end up killing your own Alex. So oftentimes you want to play it after Shadow Reaper Anduin. So this is probably a good sign for Muzzy that he still has room to be aggressive, and his opponent doesn't really have many good options, despite him taking a lot of damage from Alex's Battlecry.
And you can usually assume early in the game as a Paladin, if your opponent is using Shadow Visions, they're not taking Mind Blast. You don't have to run, you know, worry about, okay, it's just going to triple Mind Blast me, I'm dead. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for removal. They're looking for the ability to stabilize with Divine Hymn. So Muzzy can generally assume that Visions card in Dog's hand is either Divine Hymn or Psychic Scream at this point, rather than a Mind Blast that may kill him.
Poisonous is a very powerful choice to answer Alexstrasza as well. Just deny any ability for your opponent to get past your minions.
Just go face.
All right, it looks like he doesn't care. So he saw Master Spell being used, right? So I guess that means he has room to be aggressive here. Also, another one of those hidden bonuses of Psychic Scream is that you do put Alexstrasza and Dustbreaker back into your deck.
The Psychic Scream, the Alexstrasza and Dustbreaker into Muzzy's deck is actually a little bit awkward for Muzzy because he doesn't really want to draw those. He wants to draw, you know, actual efficient minions. I expect we will see the Psychic Scream this turn, and I imagine Alexstrasza will kill the Tarim, so that's not going to come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want him coming down twice. That's bad enough when your opponent has access to it off of Stonehill Defender, but thankfully for Dog, if he kills it now, there's no Stonehills to get it back in even Paladin.
There is, you know, a 90% chance if you Psychic Scream Terran that they draw it right off the top of it. So, you gotta be really careful and eliminate it. I mean, even keeping one of these Serenite Chain Gangs alive is something you want to think about as well, because can you beat a Serenite Chain Gang draw versus other cards that they might draw?
Chain Gang, I think, is probably better than their average draw, so if it is better than their average draw, you probably want to remove it.
I'd say so, considering that you're shuffling in Silver and, you know, a Stegodon that needs to combo with it.
At the same time, if your opponent is drawing Serenite Chain Gang, they're not drawing Valenier, which is, you know, or Avenging Wrath.
Oh my gosh.
Speaking of,
double
two Avenging Wraths now. Dog does have Squashling Divine Hymn in his hand, so if Muzzy were to just try and, you know, turn on the gas and fire Avenging Wrath right now, yeah, he's gonna start with 1 Avenging Wrath and a Chain Gang. So this does put Dog down to 7 life. Chain Gang threatens 4.
He's just unable to play all of these because of the mana cost, so might as well just start getting them out, and each of them have bursts in their own right. Argent Commander will burst, Avenging Wrath will burst, and Avenging Wrath over the course of 2 turns is more damage.
I think we may just see, if we see 5 Squashlings to Dog's face, he goes to 17. That is vulnerable to a second Avenging Wrath, which is the sort of thing you think might be in your opponent's hand if they fire 1 off.
Or Consecration, which is also just as bad, if not worse. Because Avenging Wrath might leave behind one of the 2/1s, which can fight on the board. This is kind of the flexibility of squashing that Echo card. Yeah, not a bad turn 10 at all, you know? Summon 10 power, heal for 10.
Yeah, Squashling is quietly pretty great. And Gen, who was screamed earlier, makes another appearance. This is actually the first time I've ever seen a gold Gen Greymane.
Yeah, he's back after getting shuffled in.
Yeah.
He's back again. Look, you did it to me first, Gib. It's only fair I do it back.
I suppose that's fair. He's back again to get...
Ooh. Whoa, wow.
I'll show myself out.
All right, wow, that is well played. I concede. You're solo casting now.
All right, well, this is the opportunity I've looked for all my life. Dog draws a Shadow Visions. I believe he still has a Psychic Scream in his deck, but not really a board he's looking to scream here. Other things he might be looking for, Divine Him. If he did find that other Mind Blast, then triple Mind Blast is lethal, but he is not working with a ton of life right now.
Yeah, he's actually in a very delicate place where, you know, if he's able to stabilize, there could be a world where he's able to burn out Muzzy if he's able to find, like, Shadow Reaper Anduin. Again, he's not playing the Holy Fire list, so it's not like he can dig for burst in the next couple turns.
Yeah, there's a Chain Gang.
Chain Gang. And again, no more screams, so Dog has to deal with this board with whatever he has. This is looking like increasingly tough position here, and kind of a funny, like, weird missed connection is that he's been holding on to his Glutton to Zeus forever because he's been waiting for one of those weapons to be drawn.
Oh, there's Anduin, but everything on the board survives Anduin. There's no 5+ minions on the board. The Anduin and Shadow Death here looking a little bit sad.
Yeah.
He does he have, I believe he does still have a Scream in the deck that he can, that he can get with Visions. I believe the first one that he, or the second one of the two that he played was off the Shadow.
Okay, you're right. So that is also a possibility. Shadow Reaper Anduin puts him to 14, and if he removes a 2/3, let's say even shoots down a 1/1, he could also heal. He should be safe.
There is the possibility that Anduin also can set up, you know, a ability to kill Muzzy. Just the blast 2 pings is 9. So blast 2 pings. If he visions for the other Mind Blast, is there a way that he just wins the game here?
He can Shadow Visions and Shadow Reaper Anduin this turn and set it up for next turn.
Though,
you go up to 14 and there's 8 on the board.
And then the Mind Blast, Visions, or Mind Blast, triple ping is 16.
He also could just hero power the face at 13.
Right.
Which would set
Similar.
that up, I believe.
Yeah, and that's what he's gonna go for.
So it comes down to whether or not Muzzy can do something right now. I don't think he can.
He's got 8. Oh, Stegodon.
Wait. So he gets +3 attack.
+3 attack is lethal,
10,
right?
14.
It's exactly lethal if he get +3 attack.
30% chance for lethal right here, right now.
And he's going for it.
Dog puts his hands up.
Wind Fury is not enough, nearly, but not quite enough to stop the Mind Blast, possible lethal next turn. I think it's also, we've seen both Shadow Visions and the Master Spell. I believe Dog is guaranteed a Mind Blast from this Shadow Vision.
And does he have enough mana to play everything? He should be able to Hero Power, Shadow Visions, Hero Power, double Mind Blast.
Exactly, the Hero Power last turn was the same as Hero Powering this turn as far as the mana usage, so I believe Dog just has lethal set up here with the Anduin. And I don't think there's anything Muzzy can do here that's going to impact that.
Making space for Serenite Chain Gang as his last defense, but
this also plays around a Duskbreaker getting in damage for Dog here for taunts because he gets the minion down to 3.
There it is.
Finds the Mind Blast anyway, so Dog turns the corner with that Anduin and Mind Blast, pings to the face. He's up 1-0.
That's what we're talking about. You know, if you're able to stall for just long enough with Shadow Reaper Anduin, which, by the way, that 5 armor game coming in really clutch because he would have died exactly without that. Dog ends up taking a critical game #1, but each game in this best of 5 will be paramount to their success as Muzzy continues to fall into a deeper deficit against a lineup that's favored against him. This is a very tough battle for him specifically.
And that even Paladin deck is one of his stronger decks. So he's hoping, you know, to be able to corner one of Dog's decks maybe and, you know, pick up the wins there. But, you know, now the Warrior deck for Dog, I think, is very good against pretty much all of Muzzy's decks. So, you know, he has to basically fight through the Druid and that's going to be tough too.
All right, well, we're gonna find out what happens. We're just getting started with this best of 5, so don't go anywhere, guys. When we come back, we're gonna find out what happens between Dog and Muzzy in game number 2.
Coming up in the final round of playoffs next weekend, we travel to the other side of the world for the Hearthstone Asia Pacific Summer Playoffs. The best players there will gather to begin their quest towards the Summer Championship. Featuring Surrender, the 2017 Summer Championship winner. Does he have what it takes to do it again? Coming in hot, a 2017 Asia Pacific Winter Champion, B787 re-enters the fray. Who could forget his match against Lojam at the 2017 Asia Pacific Winter Playoffs? And a champion enters the competition. Tom60229, the reigning world champion, and all his talents will be on full display. Who will be able to stop him? And who will be cast aside like so many others? The action continues next weekend with the 2018 Hearthstone Championship Asia Pacific Summer Playoffs.
Currently, Dog from Team Liquid is going up against Tempo Storm's Muzzy and is up 1-0. This match, Kibler, if you want to go down memory lane, reminds me of one we had last first season of 2017 when Frozen had to play Amnesiac in the top 8, and the winner would move on. And of course, a lot of people may have expected Amnesiac to be favorited and then win, and would have moved on to the Winter Championships. That was where Frozen got second place, and then of course went to second place in the World Championship. Both of those players feel very similar to this matchup, where you kind of want both to win for different reasons, and then you have like a Tempo Storm versus Team Liquid, where Frozen's on Team Liquid and Amnesiac's on Tempo Star. It just feels like there's a lot of
True,
parallels.
yeah, deja vu all over again. And speaking of which, this is a rematch of our first match of the day today. And Muzzy is hoping things turn around as he lost that first encounter. But so far, Dog has won the first game, and now it is the odd control warrior deck for Dog that he's hoping to take down Muzzy's Even Paladin once again.
Yes. I mean, Muzzy very clearly wants to try and really punish a lot of decks that have trouble with aggro. So if you're able to get onto the board faster than Spiteful Druids, if you're able to pressure Quest Rogues, things of that sort, that's where it shines. Against Warrior, though, I mean, you are playing Even Paladin, so you're probably, most likely the best deck in the game, or one of the best decks. And then, but you're still going up against a Warrior deck that is specifically designed to kill you. So it's tough to say if the Warrior deck is actually as good as it's supposed to be. But I'm feeling like with Dog is bringing this deck, he still knows what he's doing, and I think the Odd Warrior has a really good chance against that Even Paladin.
I think Odd Warrior is quite strong against Even Paladin. A big part of it is actually this little guy right here, Town Crier, is excellent at helping contain their early minions. Not only with the rush minions that it gets, but just the 1-2 body matters. Being able to cut down your opponent's board a little bit in the early turns, play it, and then tank up, tank up, tank up. These guys, as long as you can clear off the board and they can't get big threatening boards thanks to Tarim or Stegodon, you're generally able to withstand that thanks to your hero power.
So anything I've learned from Firefly is that the turn 1/2 minion is definitely something not to be slept on. As Muzzy very astutely is recognized the Town Crier means that most likely his Money Berserker will get crushed by some rushed minions. So wants to instead hero power as often as he can and force bad removal options from Dog.
Yeah, this is somewhat reminiscent of what we always used to see in Control Warrior versus Paladin back in the day, where the Paladin just wants to squeeze out value. You don't want to give them good targets for their removal. You want to ensure that you are just making them use their resources inefficiently, and that's what Muzzy's hoping for here.
Yes. And, it's very similar to how Shaman used to play against Warrior as well. Back when Shaman was the meta king. They would hero power every turn they can to squeeze out value in a more mid-rangey controlling matchup. Of course, since then, we've seen Paladin really take over as the token swarming class. And right now, Muzzy picked up the Blessing of Kings, which is a really interesting point for pressure. We kind of talked about how this is one of the most important cards for Paladin in this matchup.
It is, for sure. Turning any small minion into a significant threat is a really big deal. I think that Blessing of Kings is less valuable in this particular matchup than it was in, say, the matchup against the Recruit Paladin, or rather the Recruit Warrior, because the damage matters more when they don't have tank up. When Dog is able to just keep hero powering every turn, that Blessing of Kings minion is almost negated by itself just through the hero power. So he needs to be able to stick more that he can threaten with in order for this to really actually do meaningful damage to Dog here. Ooh, and Baron-Geddon, drawn by Dog. Not coming down just yet, but that is one of the most powerful cards in this matchup because it can neutralize almost all of Muzzy's threats by itself every turn.
Yes, unless Muzzy's able to, Sunkeeper Tarim them slightly out of range, in which case Baron-Geddon becomes awkward. Muzzy is going to get his board brawled. Dog's just hoping for not the 5/5. Ends up having the Loot Hoarder, which ends up being pretty good, actually, from in his position where he doesn't let his opponent draw a card and potentially open up his options.
Yeah, and Muzzy, though, Call to Arms and these Silverhand Recruits in hand has a lot to reload with. And Money Berserker is nice for him to get off of this because this does prevent a coin Baron-Geddon coming down to clear off the board. In fact, the Baron-Geddon is immediately challenged by a damaged Money Berserker, so that was a really nice hit for Muzz there.
When you're thinking about what to extend into, Dog has Whirlwinds that he could hypothetically have. He could have Baron-Geddon. But, I mean, outside of that, there's not that much AoE. I mean, Reckless Flurry certainly is something to consider as well, but this is not exactly the most comfortable spot here for Dog if you just look at his tools in his hand right now.
Looking like he may be considering coining something out. He was just hovering over that coin there. But yeah, he has a lot of some of the slightly clunkier cards in his hand. Faceless Manipulator, Elise. Those are cards that are intended for long, grindy type matchups.
Oh yeah.
Has not found one of his Whirlwinds.
Yeah, when you're playing against, Control Priest, for example, and you know that the armor up doesn't win you the game by itself. You need a little bit more value off of your deck. So having Elise and Faceless Manipulator great in those matchups. Kind of useless against Muzzy's lineup.
Yeah, but I talked a little bit about the power of Loot Hoarder in this deck before. Look at what just happened. Yeah, the Coin Baron Geddon came down. Look at how many cards are in Muzzy's hand. Yes, 3 of those are Silverhand recruits, but he still has 7 other cards. That's how many cards Dog's Control Warrior deck still have it in his hand.
Yes, we've seen people, very seriously put Mountain Giant in their Even Paladin deck list because they are so they're so flexible with their hand size because of Dry Gulch Jailer and Loot Hoarders. It's actually pretty funny to me that they're willing to consider that.
And now this is a great opportunity for Sunkeeper Tarum for Muzzy. He gets the 5-in from the Amani Berserker and then shrinks the Baron Geddon down to 3, able to get that trade and a little bit of lifesteal off of his Vicious Scalehide here now.
Well, it makes Whirlwind even worse now because
does.
Amani Berserker reset to gain even more power. It's not even his final form, Kibler. He can go to a 6-3 now, or 6-2 if you enrage it.
All right, well, finds,
no Reckless
the
Flurry.
thick patches, as we've heard him called.
Yeah, or maybe Baku 8 patches and swallow them whole. Avenging Wrath is the most damage I think he can do right now.
It's moons. Is patches like a moon?
It was dark, all right, for sure, when Patches was good, that's for sure. 6 plus the 8, so that's 14. His opponent was at 20, I believe. Very close. With the Argent Commander True Silver with Consecration, there's follow-up burst as well. And also, Muzzy's gonna force action from Dog, which Dog has good tools for the long control game. In fact, his hand would be pretty good against
and he just keeps picking
Warlock.
up all of his tech cards. He's got that Faceless, he's got an Owl, he's got the Big Game Hunter, but none of those do nearly enough.
I think that might be just
I believe it is, yeah. There's Equality.
Yep.
Equality Attack Argent Commander, I think, seals the deal, or True Silver.
Yep, he's at 11. There's 7 passes Equality plus True Silver or Argent Commander. Either one of them will do. And again, the Warrior class has seen a pretty significant spike in win rate this weekend. At the very beginning of day 1 trends, we were talking about Warriors win rate. I wonder what that is now, considering that the Warrior players have gotten really far, but they're still dropping to the Paladins, and we also saw Fibonacci's Warrior get swept last series.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that comes with these Warrior decks, needing to win, other matchups. Obviously, if they're just built to beat Paladin, they can include, perhaps even more anti-aggro type tools. But when you have the Big Game Hunters, you have the Faceless Manipulators in your hand, they just kind of rot. You need to have a lot more removal to be able to handle all of that pressure they're able to put on all game.
That's right. So, a big win here for Muzzy, but we expected Even Paladin to do very well. Meanwhile, the best of 5 has now set to a best of 3. So when we return, we're going to find out, beginning from game 3, what's going to happen for the rest of this series. Stay tuned. You're watching the HCT Americas Summer Playoffs. Dog and Muzzy are currently locked at 1 game apiece, and now the best of 5 has turned to a best of 3, as Dog has his Control Odd Warrior and his Spiteful Druid remaining, while Muzzy has his Odd Rogue and his very weird Token Druid build that, you know, he's been popularizing a lot on his own social media and his streams. And we'll see who has the edge going into game number 3, as this matchup coming up could be one of the most lopsided we'll see all series, because both games have been very close so far.
It's Odd Warrior versus Strange Druid. Is that, you know, kind of what the MO is here? Yeah. But Dog with a turn 1 Town Crier available to him. Good against a deck full of small minions, but Muzzy's deck isn't really full of small minions so much as small of cards that make a bunch of small minions. So specifically, Dog is, or rather Muzzy is going to be looking for those Whispering Woods, and Dog's going to be looking for his Whirlwind effect, because he really needs to be able to contain those, because if they just stick and play for a single turn, Muzzy has the Branching Paths, he has Savage Roar, he has even Soul of the Forest to get them to stick around much longer. Yeah,
and just a little clarity, I was misremembering the Paladin versus Warrior game. That was actually from the previous series that it was pretty close. The last one was actually kind of a stomp. Muzzy crushed the Warrior with even Paladin. But I expect Dog to kind of return the favor, because from my experience, you know, when Muzzy tweeted out this list, I was really excited to play some games, so I did. I ran into a couple of Warriors that just happened to have Whirlwind effects, and it would easily destroy me. Like, if I ran into a Control Warrior that even had the Death Knight, that auto lost me the game. Given that Dog, you know, can have the Death Knight, because it is an even costed card, it'll be much more challenging, but he still has some really good tools at his disposal, as long as he's patient with his removal.
Yeah, Muzzy's actually played a number of unusual versions of Druid. I think he actually played a sort of mid-range Druid, not like token style like this. Like, I was actually a little bit confused when we talked about, oh, well, you know, playing this mid-range Druid or something like that, playing a weird Druid deck. I assumed it was his, you know, Oaken Summons into Injured Blade Master list, as opposed to this Whispering Woods style list. He seems to be just exploring everything that Malfurion can do.
Yeah, it's just the fact that if you're a Druid and you're able to get slightly ahead on the board, just in body count, you can leverage really powerful tools like Savage Roar and Branching Paths, and they kind of work off of each other in a way too. You can combine them, or you can use them separately. And I've had surprise lethal in the 30s or 40s just because I got one Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, I didn't get answered.
Yep. And yeah, like we were saying, the Whirlwind effects are very powerful, but if Muzzy gets enough mana, if he gets to the point where, you know, he can play Whispering Woods and Soul of the Forest in the same turn, one Whirlwind effect is not enough to answer that. And with enough Savage Roar Branching Path type effects, that can push for lethal very quickly.
Dog doesn't want Muzzy to pick up any easy trades with the Greedy Sprite, and he's also 1 turn away from a Ultimate Infestation. Muzzy will pull, I believe, the Ironwood Golem with this Oaken Summons.
Pick up some cards, looking for perhaps Ultimate Infestation.
UI is probably the most important card from this position. And honestly, because he has, oh wow,
there it is.
Great. Honestly, also because he has the Soul of the Forest pickup, I was also saying Whispering Woods wouldn't be the worst thing ever either, because you are so much mana ahead of your opponent that you force them to react immediately. Dog does have double Whirlwind though right now.
He even has Whirlwind into Brawl, so even Whispering Woods into Soul of the Forest, that's essentially all going to die. Muzzy's going to need to assemble more than just that. And frankly, that's most of what Muzzy's deck is kind of built to do, is assemble, you know, I'm going to make a bunch of guys. Like, okay, well, my deck's built around killing a bunch of guys. Yeah. And unlike the even Paladin deck, he doesn't have that early pressure. You know, Dog's at 41. Muzzy's, you know, himself trying to build up, finds a second Infestation. Not exactly what you're looking for.
I mean, he can take it a little slow to dump his hand first, because if he loses a single copy of Whispering Woods, because it seems like he will burn a card guaranteed, maybe even more if he doesn't pick up an Arcane Tyrant. If you lose like a Whispering Woods copy, you could end up just gimping yourself of a second wave. So Muzzy could have to play a little slower and budget out his resources instead of just going for the Ultimate Station immediately the first chance he can.
He does have double swipe. He could potentially swipe hero power this turn to punch some through the 2 taunt minions, get some damage in with the tree, the golem. Okay, he's gonna go ahead and
swipe here as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this token Druid deck too is that a lot of its board setup is conditional. Whispering Woods requires you to have a big hand. Spreading Plague requires your opponent to have a wide board. And so, you know, against a slower deck, Spreading Plague for 2 1/5s is actually pretty reasonable. I've had a lot of scenarios where it's just 1 1/5, and I'm like, I'll take it because I don't have anything else.
All right, well, Shield Slam taking out the Iron Wood Golem, which is essentially the biggest that any of Muzzy's threats get. He has that and Arcane Tyrant as, well, and of course the Ghoul Infestors. All right, he's gonna be hoping to pick up one of those Arcane Tyrants. There it is, right away. So he's not gonna be forced to burn anything. Ooh, 2 Arcane Tyrants.
Yeah, 2 is interesting. I think it might be a little luxurious to play both, given that Warrior could have anything from Brawl to a Reckless Flurry, and then you've extended a lot. Arcane Tyrant is kind of like an insurance to make sure that your opponent doesn't clear with just like a Whirlwind.
Right.
Darius Crowley, one of my favorite cards from the new expansion. Super powerful in this position. Forces Druid to answer, but I mean, with things like Spellstone, it's pretty easy just to answer that threat. What really matters here is Dog just continues to rack up his life count and keep his resources in check, that he's not overextending.
Mostly Dog needs to ensure, okay, I have tools to deal with, you know, you flooding the board, because that's the scariest thing Muzzy's deck does, is create a bunch of small minions, buff them with Soul of the Forest, and you're like, all right, well, I have to have answer to Whispering Woods, answer to Soul of the Forest. And that means he wants to pair Whirlwind Brawl, Whirlwind Reckless Flurry, so he needs to be very, very judicious about his use of those cards.
Muzzy has Malfurion the Pestilent Death Knight, which is a really good setup as well, depending on what he wants to, how he wants to do this.
Yeah, it lets your hero power hit almost as hard as Tank Up.
Yeah, actually, you can match it 1 for 1 there. Looks like Muzzy instead wants to pressure with the Arcane Tyrants. Okay, this is pretty neat. It's not something that the Token Druid traditionally does, just try to pressure with, you know, an Arcane Tyrant that you pay full cost for. But it forces Dog into an awkward position, because if he does have Gore Howl, then Muzzy can really hide the other one behind Malfurion the Pestilent. And also, if he has to use removal options, he uses most of his armor on just 2 Orphans.
I just realized that we were talking about Baku eating patches, and Baku's actually a 7/8 that costs 9. It's like that old kids joke. Why was 8 afraid of 7? 7, 8, 9. It's a 7/8 that costs 9.
I like that. Yeah. There you go. Although I feel like Baku could have been a 7/9 because he's an odd costed card, right? So
Ooh, yeah.
Odd stats.
It having an even number on it. Ooh, and Gen too.
Right. Gen could be a 6/4.
Yeah. Ooh. Missed connections.
Muzzy gonna just set up walls in the way, pressure the life total, and now the armor has been mostly shaven off, but it's very easy for Dog to pick up Reckless Flurry and wipe most of this mess away. The only problem is that he's got value cards with Stonehill Defender release and another Faceless Manipulator. Although, I wouldn't be mad with a Faceless Manipulator on your Baku.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty well-statted minion for 5 mana.
It's a much better patches than patches to copy.
Yeah. Looks like Dog gonna be relying on that Ungoro pack as well. I think he's willing to pick up pretty much anything these days. And Ungoro has some pretty decent removal options with things like Meteor, for example. Maybe not necessarily the best against a Whispering Woods deck, though.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because Dog played that turn pretty fast, and there's a lot of math that can come up here as far as what's my opponent's damage range with Savage Roar? What's my opponent's damage range with Savage Roar? Savage Roar. What's my opponent's damage range with Savage Roar? Savage Roar branching paths.
Yeah.
Because that that can add up to a lot.
Well, with 2 Savage Roars into branching paths, assuming the Malfurion attacks into it, that would be 8, 9 plus 6 is 15 plus
32, I believe.
Another 12.
It's board plus 18, right?
Yeah, but he has to go through the Stonehill Defender.
Right, but he'd get 4 attack from the Savage Roar on his hero.
Yeah. So the attack with his hero. It's not enough, but it'd be a huge chunk of damage.
Maybe 27, but not enough.
Just full removal. Everything works out really cleanly, I believe. The second Spellstone should be able to clear off Elise. And then can pressure his life total off of the armor count. So now Dog again, kind of back to the drawing board. And this is like the real power of the Arcane Tyrants, but also the weakness of the Warrior that doesn't have access to good, plentiful card draw. It's got so much awkward plays.
You know, one of the weird things about the Odd Warrior is that he doesn't tend to play Acolyte of Pain. Dog has no Acolyte of Pain in his entire deck. So yes, he has these tools that can, if they line up correctly, shut down everything Muzzy's deck can do. But as we saw in the previous game, sometimes you just draw the wrong part of your deck, and you don't really have a great way to mitigate that.
Counting damage again, but not going to really be enough here. Sunwalker here is actually pretty sick. It absorbs so much damage.
A tangled web.
I wonder if Muzzy might just UI and burn his last card and just summon a 5/5. He summons a token, gets cleanly past the Sunkeeper, forces your opponent to maybe brawl. It's worth a thought at least.
Yeah.
But again, if he burns one really important card like his second Soul of the Forest or Whispering Woods, that could be super devastating and end up hurting him in the long run.
The Sunwalker does line up just like really poorly for Muzzy here.
Yeah,
He's used pretty
it's
much all
godlike in this
of his removal. It's like, all right, well, I got a 4/5 Divine Shield against your 4/4 army.
Is not.
Yeah, I don't know, half tempted to maybe just like play a spreading play here just to get another token on the board. It's very clear that your opponent's not going to extend much more onto the board here at this stage. Okay, I don't think this will summon anything here.
Yeah, just armor for Muzzy there.
I mean, there is an off chance that, you know, Dog summons multiple minions, so spreading play could get more value. Unlikely, though. And, you know, this is one other thing, too, that I like to revisit. If Dog had the ability to copy a better minion with this Baku, for example, his Lease might not get Spellstone, and he'd be able to fight back a little bit better on
if
board.
he had chosen instead to copy the Baku rather than playing the Elise that turn, it feels like maybe getting the maximum presence that he could then, he still has an opportunity to play Elise later, most likely. Yes, he is going to wait longer for the pack, but may have ended up making a difference here.
Muzzy's at 42 life. This deck actually gains a lot of armor as well, so I wouldn't. Oh, he's going for Whispering Woods. I was thinking about, you know, maybe tossing that UI, get the 5/5 out there, but I guess Muzzy feels comfortable. He feels like he may have a good enough read that Dog is struggling with real good plays. And he still has another wave of threats that he can put out because he still has the second Whispering Woods in hand and the second Soul of the Forest in the deck.
Okay, I was wondering if maybe he would have attacked the Arcane Tyrant to prevent Whirlwind attack the 4/4 into the Soul of the Forest. Because now, because Dog was able to Whirlwind here, his Arcane Tyrant is still up. He's able to attack his Arcane Tyrant into the opposing Arcane Tyrant, cast that Brawl. Whereas if Muzzy had attacked the Arcane Tyrant, that wouldn't be a possible option.
Yes, and now this Brawl will leave a guaranteed 2/2 up, but this deck doesn't work very well with 1 or 2 bodies. It needs a mid-sized board to leverage anything with Savage War.
I mean, there is still the possibility that Muzzy has, Whispering Woods into perhaps draws his second Soul of the Forest. There it is.
Yeah, but the follow-up Whirlwind.
Again, now Dog has Whirlwind into Reckless Flurry available. So that doesn't really leave Muzzy with many threats left at all.
That might just be it, straight up. And this is something that we're talking about, It's the fact that Muzzy says that Dog's 16 cards deep in his deck. It's unlikely that he again has the second Whirlwind, but that's what Dog's been saving all of his removal for just in that instance. And you see a little wince there from Muzzy, recognizing that that was pretty much the one thing he didn't want to see. Dog even going as far as to Ironbeak Owl remove the last Treant, and potentially why, at least when we had caster vision, I was trying to find a way for Muzzy to squeeze out more of that removal with Ultimate Infestation, but now he's got ability to generate 1 token a turn.
All right, well, Infestation to the face.
I think Branching Pass and Soul of the Forest.
Digs Muzzy deep fatigue here. And yeah, he's got a bunch of card draw left.
Yeah.
This 5/5 will somehow have to get the job done itself with these buffs from hand, at least. But
well, the good news is Dog can't answer this 5/5.
Right.
So double Savage Roar with 2 bodies.
Well, now he can.
Oh.
Yeah, and now no ability left to make anything but a 1/5 Scarab for Muzzy here.
Yep, and that should be it. Muzzy ends up conceding, so the Warrior deck puts Dog at match point, 1 game away from going to the championships. And Muzzy is gonna have to go back to the drawing board as he now has to, oh man, that looks
He looked in
tough.
pain. He looked like he was in pain there.
It's pretty tough. But, you know, Dog now, with the Warrior victory, just has to win with Spiteful Druid, and that's been one of the best performing decks of the current meta.
To be fair, the lineup that Muzzy has remaining, his 2 decks, they are Odd Rogue and the sort of board flood style of Druid deck. Those feel like they ought to be fairly strong against Spiteful Druid. They can put on a lot of pressure really fast, and there's no great response to a wide board from his deck.
That's right. So I guess that could work out, but the Spiteful Druid is also much better at the mid stages of the game because Muzzy will be busy ramping with a Token Druid. So even though Spiteful Druid should hypothetically struggle with those wider boards, considering they don't have as much AoE or ways to answer it, the fact remains that Spiteful Druid, at least on paper, is favored against Token Druid with its statistics, partially because you're ramping. So then they play a Cobalt Scalebane, and then how do you answer if you don't have like the swipe and the Spellstone? It could be really tough. And then, of course, you also factor in just the Spiteful Summoner getting Tarantus.
Right.
You can't actually answer that as a Token Druid.
That said, the token style Druid is much more consistent in doing its thing because it has wild growth and the ability to cycle, draw cards. But you don't need to be consistent when you just draw Keleseth, Gritty Sprite, Spiteful Summoner, and Cobalt Scalebane in your opening hand as Dog has right now. So if there's a game that you want to have this powerful of a draw, it is the one we're playing to go to the championship, and that's exactly what Dog has. And Muzzy, no wild growth, so he's going to have a slow start while Dog comes out of the gates with quite the powerful hand.
Pretty much the ideal hand from Dog, barring that he doesn't draw double Ultimate Infestation at this moment. Muzzy can Wrath, cycle and draw at the moment, because I think his hand is looking really weak. But outside of that, his plays are very limited this turn. It seems like instead he wants to take it a little bit slow and account for the worst possible scenario, which is not having anything next turn either.
I think the worst possible scenario may just be Dog's hand.
Oh, jeez.
Picks up Malfurion, so a great tool to continue to push damage.
Okay.
Wild Growth is a good draw for Muzzy. It gives him the ability to start getting his own plan online much faster.
Yeah. And now he can save Wrath for a Nourish. So if Dog curves out with Stern Knight Chain Gang, because most likely your opponent on the coin will want to save the coin for Spiteful Summoner, you can answer it with that Nourish Wrath play.
Muzzy has Spreading Plague, but not really a exciting one. Does slow down some of the damage on the board.
Spreading Plague's usefulness, especially with one mind control tech being played, is often when you can combine Spreading Plague and Soul the Forest against a Spiteful Druid.
Sure.
So it kind of sets your opponent up in a lose-lose situation. They either leave up these annoying taunts that they'll never take down and you buff them with Branching Paths, or they clear the 1/5s and then you Savage Roar them down.
Yep.
So that is one way that Muzzy can win, and you can turn board states around.
Yeah. Muzzy has a Nourish here, which he could ramp up and try and find exactly that opportunity that you just mentioned. Yeah, he will ramp up to 8 mana, gonna have 9 next turn.
Muzzy's Spellstone has actually upgraded very naturally because he's Steer powered every single turn possible.
It's true.
But he does have the Spreading Plague and Spellstone, or the Soul of the Horse combo that we talked about. So if he waits a turn for more development, that's exactly what he's looking for. And that's why Dog really needs to hit a 12-12 now more than ever if he wants to close out this series this game.
I think an 8-8 would do. I think it would do.
It's true, it's just that
You'd love to get a 12-12.
every bit of damage will matter, I think.
All right, how about a 7-14? We've seen a lot of Ultrasaurs this weekend.
Welcome to Jurassic Bark.
I get it.
TJ liked it. He's cracking up.
His face is just on the table across the stage, but The Spreading Plague comes out for Muzzy here, who can pick off some more minions, potentially with Wrath plus Spellstone, to stop the big dino if we're having a chance to get at his face here.
Ooh, so he does have the Holy Trio, Spreading Plague, Soul of the Forest, threatening it with Branching Paths, or even the Savage Roar. Like, all those are really good options. I mean, this is something that people don't really talk about, which is how Token Druid is not only just a really threatening deck by presenting the Whispering Woods, but it's also a good counter hit deck, where it's like,
true.
You extend really far, and then it's like, oh, guess what? I actually ramped up so far ahead that you played directly into my trap card, or trap cards.
Yeah,
with
the ability to just like turn the corner with the Plague, Soul of the Forest plus Roar / Paths, or Roar plus Paths is very real. And Spiteful Druid is a deck that doesn't have that much ability to really defend itself. You do have the opportunity to, maybe play a Druid of the Scythe. You have Serenade Chain Gangs.
Yep.
But those can't get in the way of that many gigantic roaring minions.
Yeah, and stuff like this second Mind Control tech is not actually like that bad of a thing sometimes too, because again, the more minions that stack onto your opponent's side, the bigger of a case that you can make for the big Spreading Plague, Soul of the Forest response, assuming that Muzzy doesn't want to be even more patient. Given that Dog has curved out really well, Muzzy doesn't have that much life to work with, so he can't be super duper patient here.
The rage.
All right.
You charge this?
He is going to.
He just wants to get blood. Second
Savage
Savage Roar.
Okay.
Muzzy has his hand on his throat, trying to stay calm and really play this out, but this is something that he's been waiting for a while, and both Mind Control techs have been played.
And Muzzy has Roar Branching Paths in his hand.
It's maximum
So
damage.
that gives him +6 attack on every minion, +4 attack on his hero.
Yes, which is why that attack is also really valuable, in case he just needs to get past with his own hero power. Malfurion the Pestilent, though, is, I think, a really valuable card in this position for Dog. When your opponent goes for a Spreading Plague and Soul of the Forest, it's pretty clear that he either wants to burst you immediately, or he's just setting up for the top deck to do it. So Malfurion the Pestilent sets up the best wall against what his opponent's gonna do, and that might give him the stall potential to last long enough for things like his Scalebane and his Grand Archivist to do work.
If Dog does not make a defensive play in some way this turn, Muzzy has lethal. This Glacial Shard has to freeze something.
Yeah, I think you freeze a 2/2 for maximum damage, but does that mean
So
that
here,
he's safe?
there's 4 attackers, so that's what?
5?
24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Is this just still lethal? This is lethal.
Wow.
I think Dog had to play Malfurion that turn.
How do you play around double Savage or Branching Paths? And maybe 2 of those cards are reasonable, which maybe Dog hedged against. Like, yeah, if he has Branching Paths.
I'm pretty sure my math is right here, right? The 2 roars let him attack for 4. The rest of the board is +6. So it's 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Yeah, that's just lethal damage from Muzzy here.
Muzzy has counter hit with double Savage Roar, Branching Paths.
Look at Dog's face. Ruh-roh.
Oh, man. Dog can't believe it. That is so much burst out of nowhere from this Token Druid deck.
Yeah, 29 damage coming in and keeping Muzzy alive in this match. We're going to game 5.
One last game to decide it all. Dog wasn't even mad. He was impressed.
I think he was just a little taken aback there. That was not something he was expecting whatsoever.
And that Druid versus Druid ended up going Muzzy's way. And again, that Token Druid, I can't sleep on it. We're kind of hinting at the swing back, the crack back, if you will, with the Soul of the Forest. And it kind of set up in a no-win situation, but he did have that option with Malfurion. Granted, the Cobalt Scalebane play was his best offensive option, and I think I can't blame Dog. First of all, his opponent has to have 3 cards to burst. Second of all, you are setting up for a potential way to lethal your opponent, because he can burst with Malfurion from the hand or a Grand Archivist while setting up Scalebane and all this damage out. His opponent was in the teens of health. can you really be upset at Dog for setting up that potential avenue of success?
Yeah, it's a tough situation because the exact combination of cards that you're trying to set yourself to play around, it had to be exactly roar, branching paths in order for you to potentially die from that spot. And if you play a little bit more defensively with Malfurion, do you give your opponent a window that maybe they can get back into the game in another way by killing off some of your minions on the board? It's not entirely clear.
Tough amount of questions, but the one answer and conclusion we came to is that there is going to be Game 5 right after this. One last game to determine it all between Dog and Muzzy. A winner gets to play in the Summer Championships and a spot potentially for the World Championships in 2018. The loser will have to accept 5th place and try again next season. That's what it all comes down to. One game of Hearthstone. Spiteful Summoner Druid up against an aggro rogue. What's going to happen here, Kibber? Last time, it was a Druid win for Dog when they played this for the last game of their series in the upper bracket.
Yeah, we have seen this matchup go both ways over the course of this tournament. I think that this matchup is generally one that you bring the odd rogue hoping to get because you want to pressure them down quickly. And the double Vilespine Slayer that we've seen players include in order to take out those Spiteful Summoner reveals is pretty important. But Muzzy here, he does not have a particularly fast opener right now. No one drop means that his pressure will start a lot slower.
Yep, the odd rogue has certainly had middling results against, at least on stream. Sometimes it's worked wonders, and sometimes it just kind of fell on its face. Which feels like something that these tempo decks can struggle with if they draw a little awkwardly.
Well, everyone gets a 1-drop on turn 2, apparently.
Yeah.
As Dog picks up Glacial Shard, Muzzy finds an Argent Squire. The Glacial Shard's actually pretty powerful here, shutting down to the possibility of a 2-damage attack from Muzzy here.
Just basically gets an extra attack in, but with the Crypt Lord or the Tar Creeper able to hide behind it. And that's going to rack up damage over time here.
Yeah, Crypt Lord does take a lot of daggers to hit through, especially if you back it up with Serenite Chain Gang. Another 1-drop for Muzzy here.
Yeah, which may be good to actually hold on later, because Muzzy not only has things like Vile Spine Slayer that he wants to combo with later, he also has Fungal Mancer and Scalebane. All of those are a good 1-5 combo. So I don't hate holding on to these things and maybe just playing the Fledgling. Let your opponent do what he wants to do on the board. If he chooses to trade with the hero power, he's going to skip real development. If he uses the Crypt Lord, he's weakening his board for easy removal.
It's true, though, Dog does have Serenite Chain Gang, which will help buff up the Crypt Lord here, give himself more of a board, take out this Fledgling immediately if he so chooses, or just go wide with these. Going to try and accelerate his mana with the Greedy Sprite, get him closer to that Grand Archivist or potential Spiteful Summoner.
I mean, the thing about Muzzy's deck list too is that this was an active, conscious decision to put a lot of heavier minions into his deck. He's not playing Ironbeak, Owl, or a lot of those smaller lean cards that you might expect in the traditional odd rogue you play on ladder. Instead, he's loaded up with a lot of heavy cards like Cobalt Scalebane, double Fungal Mancer, Leroy Jenkins, double Vile Spine Slayer, and then the occasional Baku draw. That's a good portion, third of your deck or more, that you might draw to these heavy minions.
Yeah, it's true. And now Muzzy, he is behind, and Baku Rogue, despite being a rogue and backstabbing things, can't backstab in this deck. Doesn't play that well from behind.
Does have an option of going wide on the board to set up for Fungal Mancer. I think in almost any scenario, Muzzy at least wants to attack the Crypt Lord to set up that potential swing. The only problem is that, Dog can set up more complicated ways to stab at the board with Serenite Chain Gang or his Tar Creeper plus hero power. This is not a great scenario here for Muzzy again. He might have to just kind of play this really long and hope that Dog has pretty much air in the mid game, which he does at the moment. Turns 6 and 7 looks really bad for Dog at the moment.
Yeah, he has a Tar Creeper Chain Gang available here. He could use hero power plus, he actually can't kill everything. He can use the hero power plus the 3 of his minions to take out 2 of the minions on my side of the board, right? Which is valuable, because that means that there's no full value Fungal Mancer on board. But we do see that there is a South Sea deckhand that, if Muzzy wants to play alongside a Fungal Mancer, can pair up and take down a couple of these taunts.
The only problem with that,
He uses coin, and then he can't use Vile Spine.
you lose your combos, so that is a pretty significant trade-off.
Yeah, you'd have to pick up another 1-cost card in order to enable Vile Spine soon.
At the same time, this is a kind of opportune moment to set up Cobalt Scalebane. You have an opportunity to dominate the board in terms of stats, and then leverage South Sea Deckhand and Fungal Mancer to keep your coin, or use Vile Spine Slayer, in the event that they have the Spiteful Summoner, which is very clear that they don't have it in hand, but they could always draw it.
Well, no, it's actually not clear that Dog doesn't have it yet, because this past turn his Greedy Sprite died. So next turn is going to be the first turn he's going to actually have had 6 mana on his own turn. So that this next turn is the first opportunity that Dog would have to be able to play a Spiteful Summoner this game. So I think Muzzy is still very aware of that possibility. So Muzzy here, he has the opportunity to make the Fungal Mancer play with the deckhand, but again, losing the coin there ends up being really problematic for his Vile Spine opportunity. It looks like maybe going for it anyway, though. Thinking he needs to get the immediate board presence here and run the risk of not being able to activate the Vile Spine Slayer. So takes out the Crypt Lord, takes out one of these Chain Gangs, and now Dog does not find a Spiteful Summoner just yet, so Muzzy's going to breathe a sigh of relief, as this is a very weak turn from Dog.
Yeah, it could also be a half read as well from Muzzy, saying that, if Dog held Spiteful or Greedy Sprite for a long time, he played from the left side of his hand. Had he Spiteful Summoner, I think you want to get out as soon as possible and maybe trade into it. So maybe Vile Spine Slayer is not nearly as important for the next couple of turns. And also, he drew so many of his heavy cost cards, it's very likely he picks up a 1-mana cost card for Vile Spine Slayer later on.
It's true. It's true. Blink Fox here is a pretty nice draw for Muzzy, allowing him to fill out his curve with 3 into 3. Finds a Hadronox.
That is
not the best.
Useless? What? Is there any minion with taunt in an aggro deck here? Oh, Tar
He
Creepers.
has Tar Creepers.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, Tar Creepers.
But Dog now, he has a taunt minion though, if he wants one, or he has a Ultimate Infestation cast by that Grand Archivist, and I think it's going to be spinning the Archivist wheel here.
Yeah, last time this ended really bad for Muzzy because it was the exact minion that he needed to hit.
All right, where is the Infestation go? You see Dog rubbing his hands together.
He's feeling it.
All right.
I mean, the average is
Average result, yeah. Takes out one of the small minions on Muzzy's side of the table. No 1-drop here, so there's no ability for him to Vile Spine Slayer.
Silver lining though is Dog, even though he drew a bunch of cards, a couple of them are kind of awkward. Greedy Sprite's not going to do much. Spiteful Summoner already had both of its Ultimate Infestations accounted for. Muzzy might have to play a value game here. But then
It's
if he
tough
trades,
to play a value game against an opponent who just Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, that's true. But what other options are you probably going to overtrade and then let 2 minions survive?
I like this because it ensures you still have a minion in play to get the buff from Cobalt Scalebane. There are reasonable trades for Dog here available. But Dog picking up both of his Spiteful Summoners, which unfortunately for him do nothing now, thanks to the fact that he has cast the Infestation from his deck and has the other one in his hand.
I think the most important phase, though, has passed, which is whether or not Muzzy can pressure with the board and basically be threatening lethal with every draw. Dog now basically can play, keep away, essentially, and just try and stabilize his life total every turn. Just pick the most defensive route and outvalue his opponent. He also has the ability to even maybe get aggressive. His opponent's at 21, so if he has a board set up where he can leverage his Fungal Mancer and Druid the Claw, that could also just be game-ending damage.
I mean, this turn he could even Fungal Mancer Druid to the Scythe and potentially take out multiple minions. He can clear the entire board on Muzzy's side and keep almost his entire board as well. If he plays the Druid of the Scythe here, you can kill the 5/2, or he's just going to go ahead and silence it. Okay. And go in face. All right.
Oh,
so
I like it. Dog smells blood. Muzzy picks up cold blood. Yeah. But things are looking really grim. He has the Vile Spine Slayer right now.
I mean, he can play Hench Clan into Vile Spine to take out the 7/7.
Yeah.
Kill the rest of the board here.
Yep.
With his dagger and the rest of his minions, which will leave him with a 4/4 and a 3/4 against an empty board, but he's at 14 against nearly 30 in a full hand.
Yeah, well, it's scary too, but he did get some information. First, he saw that the Grand Archivist did not trigger, so he knows that his opponent has an Ultimate Infestation burst from hand. The second thing is his opponent hit his face for 7. It's a very telling sign that things are about to swing to the opposite direction, where Muzzy's going to be on the defense.
Which means he's just got to play defensively.
Yes.
He's got to clear this entire board. Not really a ton of options for him because, bare minimum, there's 5 damage in Dog's hands coming his way eventually. Wow, okay. He wants to go aggressive here. Does Dog, okay, so there's 10, 11, 12, 13 plus 10 from hand. There's actually, okay, no, this is actually very heads up for Muzzy. I think he actually, if Dog were to go face here, he would have exact lethal, I think, from his Leroy Coldblood hero power.
Yes.
Thanks to the buff on the Hench Clan bug.
It'd be 24 and stop a hero power. So if Dog went wide with, a bunch of these things, assuming that, Dog's not going to clear, that he's not going to be defensive, which seems to be the case with this Druid the Scythe Rush.
Even just the minions to the face, hero power to the face, sets him to 5, and that means that Ultimate Infestation is guaranteed lethal next turn. He can go ahead and just charge this Druid of the Claw at the Hench Clan Thug. There's nothing that Muzzy can do to get enough damage, and nothing he can do to gain life.
There is a second Blink Fox in the deck.
That's true.
And that might be what it comes down to. Muzzy could be on his last draw, and Saucy Deckhand's not gonna do it. And Muzzy knows that Ultimate Infestation in the hand because it didn't activate. Muzzy concedes and Dog is coming to the Summer Championships.
Yeah.
Dog has taken down the back-to-back points leader for 2016 and 2017 and is able to finish what he started in 2014 when he was one series away from going to his regional championships. So finally some redemption for what he started many years ago.
Yeah, he's been around the scene a very long time, as we've mentioned many times. Always putting up those finishes just outside. Never quite taking home the trophy. No trophy here, but he will be able to play for one at the championship.
That's right, and it's really cool too because again, Dog fills that role very similar to Tice, where we know him primarily as a content streamer, and now we get to see Dog come and join us in Los Angeles for the 2018 Summer Championship. Congratulations to him, and I know Team Liquid is obviously rejoicing as well because then they got one of their boys in as well. And what a great tournament for Dog. He played exceptionally well, stuck to it, and he also did it with a different lineup too. A lot of people weren't expecting Odd Control Warrior to be nearly as good as it seemed, and he did a controlling lineup and managed to take it home.
Yeah, we saw a lot of interesting lineups throughout this tournament. All the other players who qualified with that really dominant Quest Rogue lineup that managed to take all three other spots. But Dog, he had the control deck that just took down all of Muzzy's aggressive decks that I think Muzzy was hoping he was playing against all those Quest Rogues.
Yeah, that was a really intense series back and forth, and we are happy to have Dog on the broadcast for an interview. Dog, can you hear us?
Yeah, Dan.
All right, cool. My first question is, who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
It's you.
It's
you.
TJ put me up to it. So you can be
We had to.
All right, Doc, tell us how you're feeling, man. I mean, you look exhausted, first of all, but I mean, just tell me what's going through your head.
I never really made it far in HCT, aside from the first one I played. That was like BlizzCon 2014, whenever Firebat won. So finally feels good to, make progress after all my other tournament success.
Yeah, whenever Firebat won. That's a good BC AD type of way to use Hearthstone years. Doc, tell us about your decks and preparation. You're the only one to kind of bring this controlling lineup. Everyone else brought tempo lineups that qualified for the Summer Championships. What inspired you to do it? And then, why do you think it was so successful?
Well, NA is usually just like super aggro, so I always tend to go anti-aggro, especially in Swiss rounds. No one really wants to play control decks for all of Swiss rounds, so going anti-control doesn't make too much sense. So people usually pick quicker decks. So I usually just go anti-aggro for Swiss. If it was a smaller tournament, of course I would prepare differently. But yeah, I just felt they were the strongest decks. Spiteful isn't really anti-aggro, but it was the Druid deck with the best win rate, so I went with it.
You had kind of a scary moment there in game number 4 where you just got bursted for 29 from Muzzy there. What was going through your head when that happened to you? You looked a little taken aback.
Yeah, I was thinking about how much damage you could do, and I was like, double roar branching is obviously the most damage combo you could do, but I didn't bother counting it because I don't know. I didn't really feel like it was. I didn't feel like it was necessary to play around because I was like, I lose to double swipe or I lose to double savage or branching specifically. I don't even think I died to the swipe at that point. Also, so I don't know. Sometimes you just lose like that, but that was cool. That was awesome.
That's great. And Dog, looking forward to having you in your first championship, and congratulations on your victory.
Thanks.
All right, so man, that brings us to an end of the broadcast. We have 4 players who are LA bound. We have Reyes from Brazil, now Guidan, also be joining us from Argentina, Killen all day, and Dog from the USA. What a great set of 4 players that'll be joining us for Champs in a month here, Kibler.
Yeah, a really impressive lineup, and we see they will be joined at the championship by the European players A83650. Those numbers after people's names are very important to their success. Bunny Hopper, Turna, and Viper. So lots of returning players, as well as some players who are making it to the HCT stage for the first time.
That's right. We have players who are kind of new to it, haven't competed that much. We have players who've been competing from the very beginning, getting their first chance, like Reyes and Dog. And then you have people who are even making kind of history for themselves. Now going back-to-back championships in 2 seasons. I don't know if that's ever happened in America.